Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cryptocurrent. Your host here, Richard Carthon. And today we got a special one for you. We are talking with someone that is at the ground floor of a lot of things that have been going on in the space, that I am excited for this conversation to learn more about this ecosystem, but to also see where things are headed post FTX and everything else that's been going on. So today we have Austin Federa, who's the head of communications at the Solana Foundation. How are you doing today?
Hey, doing all right. Good to be here.
Well, happy to have you. I'm excited to dive into all the things that Solana is now focused on. But before we do that, want to first learn a little bit more about you. Can you give us some background on yourself?
Yeah, I have been with Solana Foundation and Solana Labs for about 2 years at this point. Started off working on a bunch of like product and marketing stuff and kind of I have an interesting role at the organization. I work across a bunch of like different types of strategy, comms, obviously, but a bunch of the work we do too on like where we should be building next and kind of some of the theories about how we approach growth in the ecosystem. So it's a super fun place to work. Before this, I was at Bison Trails where I was running product marketing for them. Bison Trails was a blockchain infrastructure company that ran proof of stake and archival infrastructure and all sorts of that for about 20 to 30 different protocols before they were acquired by Coinbase at the very end of 2020. So before that, I actually was working for a bunch of other types of startups and worked as a journalist for a few years, actually, originally coming out of college. So kind of a strange path into Web3, but it's great.
No, it's helpful though. You're able to get all the useful information from the Web2 world and bring it over into Web3 and help accelerate at the different companies that you represented. What was that first introduction to Web3 for you? Like, how did you get first introduced to crypto and blockchain, and what made you decide this is the path I want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a lot of folks, I had a bought some Bitcoin moment, but honestly, I think I probably bound out of Mt. Gox and I lost my keys at some point, and that whole early crypto story, and then was out of it for a while, and then let's say mid 2017. I moved to New York for a job with a fintech company that was, it turns out, rapidly failing and trying to pivot into what now we would call DeFi, but they were trying to issue a borrow lend token on Ethereum in kind of mid to late 2017. The project never really went anywhere. The company shut down and, failed about 2 months later. But this was the first time I had to actually sit down and learn what's a smart contract in Solidity? What can we actually use Ethereum for? In some sort of thing for work, and you do something for work, and even personally, I was crypto skeptic at that time. I was I don't really get what the application for all this stuff is, especially a lot of the early terminology was just so bad, like a smart contract. Why couldn't we just call them programs, right? The whole model for me for Ethereum, it made absolutely no sense initially. It was okay, so there's this platform you can run smart contracts on, and none of that terminology ever made any sense. And I was oh, it's just a giant distributed computer that runs very simple programs. All right, cool. This thing makes sense now. But for whatever reason, all of the terminology we use in this industry is just, for me, it's always it's totally backwards of what the actual things people are trying to build are. So that was my kind of thing that got me reintroduced to the space and kind of excited about what this technology could do. I went to work for Republic and Republic Crypto, running marketing for them, the launch of the Republic Crypto brand and all that kind of stuff. And, from that point on, I was really hooked on working in the space.
Yeah, so a great journey. Being able to first get in, learn about Bitcoin, buy some, unfortunately go through the Mt. Gox situation. But then as you get reintroduced by looking at what's happening in early fintech play and starting to really dig deeper into it, you saw the future of what this could be. So you started doing the marketing, you started getting into these different opportunities. And then you fast forward and you land at Solana head of comms. So a lot of people would have been oh my gosh, this is a really cool opportunity, et cetera. And you've had a unique pathway to getting here. So for the person who's listening and they're I'm trying to figure out how do I get into one of these big foundations, get one of these opportunities, even through these bearish times, how would you say, what is an approach that a lot of these people could do to at least start a path to getting some type of opportunity like that?
Yeah, I mean, so for one thing, I joined Solana in January of 2021, so it was hardly a huge thing back at those days. It was still a pretty up and coming protocol. I think there were 35 programs that had transactions per day on the network. It's over like 1,100 now, and obviously it's a much different organization than the foundation was beforehand. But I would say so many folks I talk to in the space, they seem to just be waiting for permission from someone else. Like they want to go through some training program or they want to do something and they think like, oh, if I just get this credential, then somehow I'll be like qualified. And the truth is like no one's really qualified to work in Web3. It happens so quickly. The industry changes so completely. If I went on a 9-month sabbatical and came back and someone was like, go be head of comms at a foundation, like there would still be a solid 2 to 3 months of catching up I would need to do because this industry moves so quickly. So there's folks who 6 months ago knew nothing about blockchain and now they're running marketing for like a protocol or something along those lines. I think really like we're in such early days and the technology changes so rapidly. It isn't like trying to get a job at Google or Facebook or something like that, where like you have to go to the right schools and then you have to have the right kind of career path. And then maybe if you're lucky, you'll end up at, it's like, it's just a very different world getting into crypto. So much of it's like self-education. The biggest thing though for me that's like helped me in my career weirdly is like not doing anything related to this at all undergraduate. Like I did political science and environmental studies and like econ undergrad at like a liberal arts college. Nothing at all to do with this stuff, but like the place I see people make a mistake in crypto is they get too tribal too quickly. They stop looking at the underlying technology. They start like there's a huge amount of like cultish echo chamber in this space. And like it's fun. Sometimes it's useful, right? Like I think you have to have a hell of a lot of grit to stick around through the Ethereum 2018 bear market where everyone stopped building and everyone left. Like the cult is the thing that gets you through that. But like if you drink your own Kool-Aid, you lose sight of the point of this technology and what we're actually doing here. And so that's one of the harder things about the space is you tie philosophy and technology and economic interest all at once. And that trifecta is like the power that what makes the space so sticky. It also makes it very easy to just like get radicalized. The same way folks get radicalized on YouTube about anything else in the world, they get radicalized about a specific implementation of a technology. Um, I don't think if you talk to anyone high up at Solana Foundation or the Ethereum Foundation or any of these blockchain foundations, they're not single chain maxis. They really see this as like technology that'll change the world and like yeah, they believe in the implementation that they're working for, but it's not like I think in order for Solana to succeed, Ethereum needs to fail, or if Solana failed, it would mean Ethereum was more valuable. Like all of that kind of stuff is very short-sighted, especially when we have at most 20 million daily active users of all crypto combined.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack with that. The biggest being that you don't need permission to like go for something that you're looking for, and a lot of the job is learning while you're there, and then being able to add value to whatever
Yeah,
you're bringing. And to
totally.
don't get so narrow minded that you are only focused and very shallow in what you're seeing, and be able to take a step back and get a bigger view of everything else that's going on in the market so that you can be more informed and help drive something
Yeah,
towards what you're going to.
it's a hard thing though, like to stay both optimistic and skeptical at the same time, and that's like I think the
Yeah.
best attitude you can bring to this space.
Yeah, I think that's well said. So you now fast forward. It's 2021. You get into the Solana Foundation, and it's a roller coaster, right? So like y'all you
Oh yeah,
come out of nowhere, go on this absolute tear of everyone knowing about it. And all of a sudden you have an NFT platform that's competing with Ethereum. You have all these other amazing things that roll out, and then 2022 happens. It's been a roller coaster on the other side of this journey.
yeah.
What do you think are some of the biggest takeaways through the experience that you've just encountered?
Yeah, one of the funny things to do is like you look at like what happened in early November, right? I think the first thing everyone's going to think of is like FTX. But the first thing that happened in November is we had over 3,500 developers come to Lisbon for Breakpoint. And like the annual Solana conference, this was the second year we've done it. In the middle of a bear market to get over 3,000 developers out to Lisbon for a hacker house, into a Solana Games Day, which is all about like games being built on the Solana network, and then to go into 4 days of the Breakpoint conference itself. Like I think you saw just an amazing number of people show up for that, and then FTX completely imploded 2 or 3 days later. And I think that was a real shock to be looking at these two things at the same time, which is like there's never been more interest in development on Solana network. It is the most developed network after Ethereum in terms of projects built on it, and ecosystem adoption, reference implementations, all that stuff. And at the same time, the bottom of the market falls out, right? Like the FTX imploding, there was a strong view that like FTX is very closely aligned with Solana and Solana Foundation. That's not really accurate. FTX had been an investor in the space, and they'd built a few projects like Serum. But for the most part, what we were seeing a huge amount of value get tied up in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And so that's the thing that like so many folks are going through right now is funds that are maybe still locked on that exchange, and trying to figure out like what does that process look like. We're talking Tuesday, which is the first day, the same day the House hearing started on FTX, and they've been really interesting to watch and to see how we still don't really know exactly what happened and what really led to the downfall of the exchange at this point. But there's a lot of people who are obviously hurting pretty bad from that. The foundation itself, had about $1 million of cash and cash equivalents on FTX International. But from an organizational standpoint, it hasn't really affected the roadmap or the resiliency of the community.
Yeah, and appreciate you speaking of that. And just to echo how resilient and different I think this bear market is compared to even 2018, when going through the 18 to 20 lull, a lot of people that were in the space were really here and saw the future, and like, it doesn't matter what price fluctuations are, we're here to build and we believe in this future. Now you have the bull market that just happened from 2020 to 2021, about November, and now we're back into this bear time. But the amount of people who are sticking around is drastically different. Like, you could see it at Consensus, you could see it at things like NFT NYC, even at your own conference, seeing 3,000 people show up during this type of environment. Like, it shows how much the market has changed and how resilient people believe in the future of what Web3 ultimately is building.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing because like it feels to me a little bit like March of 2020, right? Where it was like, so I graduated high school right around the economic crash of 2008 and 2009, right? And that was like something was deeply fundamentally wrong with the US housing market, and that ripple-on effect took down, huge amounts of financial institutions all around the world. March of 2020 was different. March of 2020 was, I don't want to call it artificial because that like makes me sound like some conspiracy theorist, right? But like the economy was humming and we had to press stop on that thing because of a global pandemic. And in some ways, like this bear market feels very similar to that, especially when you look at like the FTX fallout. Nothing fundamentally has changed about the nature of the Solana network or any of these other networks. It's just the confidence in the macro structure of the system is shaken at this point. And, I think it's also important to remember, like, when these exchanges fail, they're not actually Web3 products. They're not actually blockchain products, right? The FTX could have been trading, pork belly futures for all we care. They did something that's like very likely illegal, and they broke the bank there, and they created a huge amount of damage to users. But that wasn't a blockchain thing. That was a centralization thing. Any centralized exchange could have had the same issues that they did. And so I think that's one of the hardest things to reconcile is that sort of idea that like there's never been more developers building in the space. Like things are actually going very well from a technology and adoption standpoint. And then, these sort of incidents like the bear market just come out of nowhere.
Right. So let's talk about that. So unfortunately with FTX and everything else that happened, Solana got drastically impacted by all of that fallout. Yeah. However, had that not happened, there's still a lot of really amazing things Solana's building, working towards, and has on the roadmap. Are you able to talk towards some of those things that y'all are currently have in the pipeline?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, one of the biggest ones is FireDancer, and so FireDancer is a second implementation of a validator client coming to the Solana network. Currently, only Ethereum and Bitcoin have multiple validator clients, and this is a an implementation of that core software that runs the network. And It's really important to have multiple implementations of the client because they have different dependency trees, right? So if there's a bug in one piece of code, it's very unlikely that bug exists in the second implementation of the validator client because they're built in different programming languages. The idea of like the same piece of code is going to be problematic in both, like the chances are just very, very, very small. So it's a hedge, right, to make sure that the network can stay both online and secure. That has been benchmarked in synthetic testing environments that represent sort of a proxy of real world load, but it's not real world load, to about 1.2 million transactions per second capacity, which is nuts. And I don't think we'll ever see what I don't think in the short term we'll see anywhere near 1.2 million transactions per second once FireDancer shifts into production. But it's a good indicator of what that theoretical upper bound of performance looks like. On top of that, there's just a ton of work being done in the community to sort of repair and replace some of the things that FTX was involved in. So Serum is the first central limit order book built on chain. This is different from an automatic market maker, an AMM like Uniswap is or something like that. A central limit order book is the same order system that the New York Stock Exchange uses or something along those lines. And so Serum was one that was built on Solana. It's been redeployed and forked as OpenBook, and so OpenBook now is a totally community-run project, which is a core piece of DeFi infrastructure for Solana. And so you can see that like folks throughout the ecosystem are kind of rebuilding and expanding a lot of these components that maybe FTX was involved in before. So it's really exciting to see all that come together. And then of course we have the Solana phone that's now shipping. So that's cool.
Yeah,
to
I was
see
actually
too.
that was gonna be one because I know that was supposed to be a big drop, and then the timing again, timing is wild. But
Yeah.
can you talk to a little bit about the Solana phone?
Yeah. So, this is a really, really cool piece of both hardware and software that this team at OSOM has been developing. It's the same hardware engineering team that built the Essential phone. So they've built and the iPad Pro and a bunch of that awesome stuff in the past. So the Solana phone called Saga is now shipping. You can go to solanamobile.com and you can sort of take a look there at kind of what that looks like. But it's built on top of Android, except it does two things different than any other phone or crypto platform on the market. The first is it stores seed phrases on something called the secure element inside the phone. This is the same place that like Face ID is stored or your credit cards are stored. It's a really super secure piece on the phone it's not quite as secure as a ledger, but it's the closest you can get without dedicated hardware to being as secure as a ledger. It's way more secure than a software wallet or a browser extension. And the second piece is this whole decentralized app store that's built on Solana as well. The cool piece here is the underlying operating system is Android. So you still get Google Maps, you still get Google Play Store, you still get all that good Google stuff you like. But much like when you get a Samsung phone, it comes with the whole Galaxy store. The Solana phone comes with a whole decentralized app store for folks who want to build applications on Solana. So there's NFT marketplaces there, there's games, and with all of this, as you see, both Apple and Google and especially Apple starting to restrict what you can do with NFTs on their platform, so you can restrict the in-app payments. This is really an alternative direction to counter Google and Apple's moves here, and the end results, the end goal, I hope actually, is that the Solana phones in some ways stop being sold eventually because it's just been integrated into core Android and core Apple, right? The same way that like NFC and like 5G started out on features that only a few phones had, and now every phone sold has it. We'd love to get to a place where this open software stack is integrated into most phones that are sold.
Yeah, I think that'd be excellent. I think we're
It's pretty
probably
cool.
years out from that just from
Yeah,
looking how
me too.
history repeats, unfortunately, and especially as Apple still doesn't understand how fees work on blockchain. But we'll get there with enough time. But I remember when the news dropped about the Solana phone came out, and I was like, man, this is really cool, and it's going to be a disruptor. So happy to see that
Yes.
shipping out. Um,
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sure Apple knows exactly how fees on a blockchain work. They just don't really want to admit it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, they got somebody in there. So a lot of amazing things coming out for Solana. And obviously there's been a lot of lessons learned from just all the things that have occurred this year. Do you think as the general populace looks at the world of Web3, all of crypto, all of blockchain, and just sees the three Black Swan events that happened this year that kind of put us in this extended bear that we've seen so far, how do we start to get on the other side of that and rebuild that trust for mass adoption to start taking form? What do you think are some of the ways that that can start to happen?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while before the retail trading activity really comes back. I think you can argue that that was never what this whole place was about anyway. I think what we've started to see, and especially you saw this at the tail end of the last cycle, was applications the users barely knew were on blockchain that were bringing folks to the network. So Step In is a great example of this, right? As sort of a move to earn game built on Solana. Most people who downloaded it and initially set it up, like I don't think they were deeply aware this was a blockchain-based game at this point. There's about 15 or so really high-quality blockchain games rolling out in Q1 on Solana. I think the goal for the bear market really now is to both build the fundamental infrastructure that you need to make sure that the network is ready to support that and developers are ready for that next cycle. And at the same time, bring users to discover all the power of stuff built on blockchain that you don't even necessarily know is built on blockchain. And I think this is kind of one of those things where like, I think when people are using an application in the real world, they don't really care what the underlying technology it's built on is. Like, do I really care if the web service I'm using is built on Amazon or Google Cloud? Like, no, I don't. I just care that it works, right? I think that's like,
Right.
we're starting to see blockchain technology deliver the same type of experiences that centralized applications can deliver, except with much more flexibility and obviously openness for users and all that sort of thing. So I think that's what I'm really looking forward to is that it's sometime in the next 12 months, we'll see a few different breakout applications, maybe on Solana, maybe on other networks that start bringing in, multiple millions of users to these networks. If we can see, 3 or 4 of those in the first half of next year, I think the market's going to come back much more quickly than it would if we don't get that sort of use case really built out for users.
Yeah. And games have been a great bridge in a lot of ways to get people more and more involved on trying out some of these new applications because people can instantly like recognize what's going on there. But the move to earn, it's like a unique concept where
Yeah.
imagine when the first like Pokemon game came out, Pokemon Go, and everyone was doing it, and you could get all these different creatures. But well, imagine if you could collect the Pokemon and be earning while you're doing it. Like man, there's just so many different like elements of things that I think with enough time you can combine a lot of different uh, unique pieces that would like have more people receptive to participating. And like you said, it doesn't matter that the underlying technology is blockchain. If it works and functions as a Web2 application, and now you just can do more things, like the end user does not care. Just like you said, they don't care. They just want it to work and work well.
Or they'll care later, right? Like, you get, I think like folks didn't originally care about a smartphone unless you were a business user, right? You had a reason to get a BlackBerry. And suddenly like more people had a reason to get an iPhone. And like the camera became the feature that like made everyone get a camera phone because they wanted to send photos to each other, right? Like these little things, like I don't think anyone looked at the original iPhone and was like, this device will change dating forever. But like you couldn't have built Tinder without the iPhone. And like we don't even know what the pieces of software and technologies and user-facing applications people are going to build yet on blockchain that can't be built on Web 2. So I'm really excited to see what that stuff is.
Yeah, I know I am too. And I know that you and Solana have a lot that's going to be dropping in 2023 and are going to be exploring a lot of different things. So much so that you have a podcast that's dropping. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we got this. We used to run a podcast that was really focused on like deep tech of what was going on in blockchain. We've changed it up a bit. The new show is called Validated. It's really focusing on like honest conversations on what's going on in the blockchain space, with a focus less on specific projects and more on the technology and the paradigm changes taking place in this industry. So should be
Yeah,
fun.
I think that's awesome, and I think it's especially for the people who are in it and you're trying to see like what was the efforts that were being built back in the last bear in 2018 and how much of those dynamics have shifted with how the market is now adapting and seeing like
Yeah.
where people thought, oh, if I built this thing, people will come, everybody be happy. And oh, that actually didn't work. It fell flat in its face and people are having to pivot. So I think having those types of honest conversations about lessons is important. It also helps with innovation.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And you know, I think you've dropped a lot of really good information for us today, Austin. But I always like to wrap up these interviews with a couple of fun questions. And the first one I always like to start with is with all the information you've been able to learn throughout the years, especially during your time at Solana. If you could go give yourself 1 to 2 pieces of wisdom when you first started your crypto journey, what would you tell yourself?
I was intimidated at the beginning, like back in 2017. I was definitely intimidated by how much it seemed like everyone else knew. And I still talk to people now who are like, how do I learn it as much as you? How do I get into this space? I think the answer is like pay attention for 3 to 6 months and you will be just as up to date on that stuff. I think that's like there are way fewer gatekeepers in this space than you could possibly imagine, to the point where there's pretty much zero. So just dive in, learn what you're curious about, and the rest will work out.
Yeah, I agree. The access to information is there. The ways to participate are way more open. I mean, between Twitter Spaces and
Yeah,
Discord channels, Telegram, like you can
it's
get
great.
direct access to a ton of really rich information. Now, yes, you have to be able to sift through and figure out what's quality
Yeah.
information versus the other, but the access, the accessibility is amazing.
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is start with the tech. Don't try and figure out what's going to make you money. Like if you actually want to learn something about this space, start by learning a piece of tech and kind of work out from there. It doesn't really matter what you pick. You can start learning Solana, you can start on Ethereum, you can start on Cardano, you can start on Polkadot. It doesn't matter. Like learn the terminology, adapt it to other chains, like and figure out what's interesting to you.
Definitely. Someone gave me the advice of like find a technology or a ecosystem that makes a lot of sense to you. Go deep in that, and then you can start to expand elsewhere. And you because you already have a foundation built, you're able to build a lot faster. If you try to go to every
Yeah.
place all the time, like all at once, there's it's gonna be chaos. So
Yeah,
I think
that's
that
great
is
advice.
definitely a good takeaway. But Austin, as we wrap up here, man, what is a final thought that you want to leave with all of the listeners here today?
I think it's just like this technology isn't going anywhere. And that doesn't mean you have to pay attention to it, but uh, don't don't fall for the crypto is over doom and gloom narratives. Like this technology is too disruptive to be going anywhere.
Yeah. And I think that is always an amazing reminder. The FUD, the fear, uncertainty, doubt that people
Yeah.
are always trying to like get you to go online and panic and all that kind of stuff. Just put that aside, focus on what's being built. And I mean, you can hear it and just go back and listen to this conversation. There's a lot of really amazing things being built. It sounds like Solana's continuing to build out amazing things. And I'm excited to see what continues to happen within that ecosystem. So, Austin, what are ways that people can learn more about everything going on over at Solana and also be able to connect with you directly?
Yeah, for Solana, Solana.com has a bunch of the new exciting stuff that's going on. At Solana on Twitter is the main handle. Lots of great stuff shared from there. For me, Twitter, Austin_Federa. It's probably the best place to find me.
Perfect. Well, you've given us a lot of amazing information. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. And as always, for everyone listening, stay cryptocurrent.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Cryptocurrent. Cryptocurrent is a cryptocurrency and blockchain education platform that's bridging the gap between the curious newcomers who are just discovering the space and the thought leaders who are shaping its future. All opinions expressed by Richard Carthon, the cryptocurrent team, and their guests on this show are exclusively their own opinions. This show and any other cryptocurrent production is exclusively for informational purposes.